The secrets of Putin's offices. It turns out that the Russian dictator has been hiding for years exactly where he is and from where he governs the country.
For the past 10 years, we've constantly seen Putin in this very office. The bright, functional office, measuring 120 square meters, is located on the second floor of the new press service building in Novo-Ogaryovo. Outside the windows, there is 1.5 kilometers of forest. You can't just peek inside from the street. That's where Putin makes important phone calls, holds video conferences, and meets with people. And for almost the entire pandemic of 2020 and 2021, Putin, at least according to Kremlin reports, worked right there. Or did he?
After studying dozens of hours of broadcasts from the program Moscow Kremlin, Putin, archives from the Kremlin website, government procurement documents, building plans, routes of Putin and his entourage, as well as hotel bookings and business trips of state TV employees, journalists from the Sistema project discovered that since 2015, exact replicas of the suburban office have been created for the dictator to conceal his actual location at any given moment.
The Kremlin uses these replicas to create the illusion that Putin is working in the Moscow suburbs. In reality, a significant portion of the footage, supposedly from the Moscow region, was filmed in decoy offices far from Moscow.
As of today, at least 3 absolutely identical offices are known to exist in different corners of Russia. In Novo-Ogaryovo near Moscow, at the Bocharov-Ruchi residence in Sochi, and in Valdai. Each of them replicates the original interior down to the smallest details, including the color of the walls, the arrangement of the furniture, and decorative elements, so that viewers cannot tell one room from another. The complex system of duplicate offices allowed the dictator to record addresses and hold meetings from different parts of the country, creating the illusion of stability and a constant presence in the same office. Despite the apparent identicalness of the rooms, journalists have uncovered small but telling differences: the height of the door handles, lines on the walls, and the arrangement of folders on the desk. It was these details that became the key to exposing the carefully concealed deception.
By drawing 2 lines, we can confidently say which room Putin is using. Here is Novo-Ogaryovo, and here is the copy office. And again, here is the original, and here is the copy.
Since February 2023, Putin has practically stopped using the Sochi office after he began to fear attacks from Ukrainian drones. The Bocharov-Ruchi residence, once convenient and safe, turned out to be vulnerable, and the dictator began looking for more hidden and protected places to work.
Even though several air defense zones have been set up in that area, it's still quite close to Ukraine, and the long-range capabilities of the Ukrainian drone forces allow them to cause a lot of trouble there. That is exactly why Valdai is located farther away. It is much better hidden, and the topography there is significantly better. Well, it's in the forest, it's a residence in the woods, and in Sochi it's a residence in the mountains, in a fairly open area. But it has a view, you know what I mean? So when you build yourself a residence with a view, so you can see both the mountains and the sea, it's not just that you can see the sea, but you can also be seen a little bit from the sea. That's why Sochi has dropped out of the list of favorite residences.
Since the beginning of 2025, the same fate has befallen the suburban office in Novo-Ogaryovo. Now, Putin's addresses and meetings are recorded in 2 different offices, one in the Kremlin and one at Lake Valdai in the Novgorod region. It was there that another office was set up. Journalists claim that the Valdai residence became the main home for Putin's secret family, unofficially formed with gymnast Alina Kabayeva. There, the dictator could hold private meetings and record addresses, passing them off as footage from the suburban residence.
It also has its own distinctive features. The first is a switch. It is located exactly in the center of the panel, unlike in the original Novo-Ogaryovo or the copy in Sochi. The second is the seam on the wall, the one behind Putin's head. It is much higher than the panel joint. This office has its own writing set, its own unique pattern on the desk, and in total we found more than 150 photos of this office. Well, that's from the ones we were able to identify. Let's once again show how the 3 rooms differ from each other. In all 3 rooms, the seam on the wall behind Putin is at a different height. This is how the positions of the door handles differ. This is how the thermostats are located in different places. And this is what the desk and the document folder look like.
Analysis of video materials and movement routes showed that, despite the apparent work in Novo-Ogaryovo, Putin could actually have been in any of the 3 mentioned offices. Journalists recorded how, in a single day, the president would appear in an office with one type of renovation, then a few hours later in another, and then back in the previous one.
Starting around 2018, there has been a process of completely merging the personal comfort of the president's physical body, his actual body, with the needs of the state. Yes, so the king's body, as it were, ceases to be a human body and becomes a vast state hyper-object, within which clinics appear, secret residences, a second family, by count, existing in parallel with the first, since after all, he did divorce his wife. And all of this no longer works in the sense of, let's at least pretend that the president follows the rules, performs the ceremonies, but rather let's build everything in such a way that it's simply convenient for the president.
And while the Kremlin creates the appearance of stability and power, in reality, the Russian dictator is afraid. He fears Ukrainian attacks, he fears losing power, he fears any signs of instability.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
In addition to the regions they have already occupied, the Russians want to take Kharkiv, Mykolaiv and Odessa regions from Ukraine. And analysts from Foreign Affairs believe that the year 2026 could be decisive. Vladimir Putin will pursue his goal in 3 steps.
If Russia manages to hold on to the 4 regions that have already been annexed, and adds Kharkiv, Mykolaiv and Odessa, this would effectively cut Ukraine off from the Black Sea. Under these circumstances, the Kremlin will seek a ceasefire, believing it can move on to the second stage, using economic pressure and political warfare backed by the threat of a new invasion to impose control over Kyiv. In the third stage, Russia plans to absorb Ukraine and bring it into its orbit, similar to what happened with Belarus.
Honestly, when I read this particular provision, I immediately and vividly remembered Medinsky's words, which he said at one of the official meetings with the Ukrainian delegates, with the representatives of Ukraine, that, gentlemen, you could lose 3 more regions. Apparently, such sentiments and such plans really do exist in the Kremlin. To be more specific, it seems that these kinds of ideas and intentions are not just rumors, but are actually present and being considered at the highest levels of the Russian government within the Kremlin itself. This is important because today, as Jake Watling writes again, the West, mainly Europe, not to mention the United States, is primarily focused on the issue of security guarantees for Ukraine, on issues related to the demilitarized zone, the deployment of troops on Ukrainian territory, peacekeeping forces on Ukrainian territory, and so on. The territorial issue is being discussed. Well, what is meant in this context are the possible options for dividing these 3 regions. I mean, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson, in fact. But in the author's opinion, this serves to distract attention, diverts valuable resources, and distorts the understanding of what will actually happen on the front in the coming year, at the very least. The main point here is that President Putin is, as I have already said, absolutely not ready or willing to agree to any kind of ceasefire until not only the regions that are already partially occupied, but also 3 additional new regions are fully occupied.
Europe's indecisiveness, Donald Trump's flirtation with the Kremlin, and the focus on China, all of this only encourages the Russian dictator. Although things are not easy for Russia, it is standing its ground. According to analysts, bringing down this colossus with feet of clay will require a set of measures, a painful blow to the shadow fleet, to the oil industry of the aggressor country, as well as more weapons and improved training for Ukrainian recruits. At the same time, analysts note that one of Ukraine's main problems today is an insufficient number of infantry.
The problem lies not so much in gathering people off the streets, but in improving the quality and capabilities of training and integrating Ukrainian infantry into combat brigades. Today, more people are serving in the Ukrainian army than at any other point in the war. But the military is unable to train its personnel to carry out tasks on the front line. To address this growing problem, Ukraine's new army corps will need to establish brigade rotations and allow stronger units to help train the less prepared ones.
Ukrainian analysts have long pointed out that one of the reasons the Russians are succeeding near Pokrovsk is the insufficient number of infantry. In some positions, soldiers have to spend 100 days or more in incredibly harsh conditions under constant enemy assaults and shelling. And although recently the focus has been on Pokrovsk and Kupiansk, the gray zone is rapidly expanding in the Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhzhia directions. The threat of occupation looms over Huliaipol.
From the north, a rather formidable and imposing Russian armada is advancing. And in general, well, if serious and decisive measures are not taken, and if the defensive structures, the fortifications and protective barriers around, well, actually, this is the fortified district of Huliaipol. It's not just the settlement itself. If these defensive structures are indeed well built, then there is a certain and realistic possibility that the plans of the Russian generals will not, in all likelihood, be fulfilled. But if not, then unfortunately the tragic story of Vuhledar, Avdiivka, Bakhmut, and regrettably Pokrovsk may very well repeat itself once again. But again, this is somewhat related. These events that are happening there are somewhat related to the article we discussed. After all, it talks about the occupation of the Zaporizhzhia region and the capture of Zaporizhzhia by Russian troops. This is considered one of the strategic objectives of the upcoming campaign, the campaign of the coming year. And indeed, Huliaipol is, well, one of the important, I'd say a crucial and central point in the defensive system of the Zaporizhzhia region, in the region's defensive system. If the situation there develops according to a potentially unfavorable scenario, then the Russian forces will be able to establish a kind of bridgehead in the coming weeks. A bridgehead for advancing their offensive next year.
This winter, British analysts note, could prove decisive. In many ways, the success of the Russians will also depend on the mood of the Ukrainians.